Hello community, and this is MandelSoft from ProMods. Today we are going to talk about some new stuff that has been hyped for a very long time for ETS2, and that is the Scandinavia DLC. Although most reactions about the DLC were mostly positive, not everyone was satisfied with it. On the other end, there's the ProMods map covering the same area as the DLC does for 1.5 years. It's inevitable that people will compare the two maps to see which one is best. So how good is the DLC, and is ProMods really that good to Scandinavia? I will give you my personal opinion about the subject, and let's start with the stuff I really like from this DLC. For starters, the DLC map looks absolutely gorgeous. Compared to what SCS has mapped before this DLC, this is a step in the right direction, and SCS has excelled themselves dramatically. There have been many underhood changes to the game engine and the assets. One of the most notable changes is the lighting system, which has been completely revised for this DLC. But they implemented many more systems. They have implemented a whole new signage system where you can type and modify the printing in-game. Instead of selecting overlays from a preset list, you can have to modify outside of the game. We have hugely exploited the system in the Autobahn rebuilding project, and we are implementing the system in more and more countries on our map. SCS has created for this DLC a completely new model-based road system, since the procedural road system they used before had some technical limits regarding the road markings. With the exception of the motorways, all roads you see in the DLC use this new system. And although we haven't completely figured out the technical details of the system yet, the system shows some huge potential. The DLC also introduces electronic toll gates, something we also really want to use on our map. And of course a truckload of new assets, such as bridges, ferry terminals, houses, vegetation and a lot more. Now, back to the stuff we can actually see as end users, the map itself. Norway is spot on. The fjords and mountain roads are beautifully made. There are quite some characteristic landmarks here and there, and quite a lot of unique bridge designs. It feels like Norway all the way. If you compare this to our version of Norway, they have beaten us hands down in this area. Our version of Norway looks quite bland compared to what SCS has created for this DLC. So kudos for them! Sweden is a bit of a hit and miss, but I will talk about the bad stuff later. What's good is that I can actually recognize some stuff from Sweden when I was there in real life. For instance, these planes here at Linköping. They are just spot on. This is a lovely detail they have put in this DLC. I like it. There's also a lot of 2+1 roads. These are quite common in Sweden, and they are also quite commonly found in the DLC. And they are specially made for this DLC because you will not see them anywhere else around the map. Overall, the landscaping in the DLC is much better than we did in Sweden. The differences can be clearly seen on the E6 between Göteborg and Helsingborg, where the DLC shows quite some variation in landscape. Our version is quite dull and detailless in comparison. Do remember that the majority of Scandinavia was built by Nico 2 years ago, and he did it all alone. Outside school there was no one else in the team. Our version of Scandinavia is getting really old now, and it really shows now on the map. There are quite some big bridges in Denmark, and SCS has really invested some time in them. They are all pretty much like the real deal. Also, the ferry ports in Denmark are also really nice and show quite a lot of variation in different designs. Finally, SCS built some custom interchanges for the first time on their map. And man, some of these are gloriously complex. It seems that SCS has mastered the art of interchange construction. I would definitely love to see more of this stuff in upcoming map updates. However, not all design decisions are universally praised. Let's tackle the interchanges first. SCS built 16 custom interchanges on this map. For their first time, the interchange designs are not really that bad, but there are still some design flaws in them. For instance, there are bumps that could easily be avoided by a slight different design, and they haven't taken 2-lane ramps into account. However, despite the fact that SCS can now build custom interchanges, there are still quite some stock prefab interchanges you see over and over again. For instance, this interchange is used 19 times. 19 times! If you look closely, The custom interchanges are mainly applied in Stockholm and Oslo, and for Denmark doesn't have any custom interchange. This is really a shame, because there are quite some locations where Denmark could use some custom interchanges. Seeing the same interchanges over and over again quickly becomes repetitive and boring, and that's why we mainly build custom interchanges nowadays. Not only are they not repetitive, but they are also way more flexible. You can fit the interchange into a landscape instead of fitting the landscape around the static prefabricated interchange. One of the things I am happy about is that they stopped using the diamond interchange, which are notoriously bad for traffic flow. Stockholm and Copenhagen are underwhelming. Truth to be told, Copenhagen in our version is quite rubbish. The version in the DLC doesn't look bad, and I have to say that suburbs in Copenhagen really do look like this, but it's all out of place. Copenhagen has a large network of multiple ring roads, and I miss this completely in the DLC. I also miss the canals and the wider city roads. Copenhagen feels like a smaller town instead of a metropolis. I have seen SCS creating the illusion of a big metropolis better in other parts of the map than here in Copenhagen. The fact that there is only a single access road also bothers me. Most cities have 2 or 3, but why does a big metropolis only have 1 access road? It doesn't make sense, it doesn't feel right. In the case of Stockholm, I think our version pretty much nailed the look and feel of the city with its tunnels, bridges and complex interchanges. Part of it is present in SCS's Stockholm, but not as good as it should have been. For instance, you have 3 interchanges in Stockholm that follow up each other pretty quickly in SCS's version, and this pretty much kills traffic flow from an engineer's point of perspective. Take a look here, this is a weaving section and it's ridiculously short. No way you can properly merge on that thing. What's also apparent in Stockholm is something that's really apparent in the rest of the DLC. The DLC map has some kind of allergy against motorways wider than 2 lanes. Take a look at the Essingeleden. In real life this is a wide 4-lane motorway forming the western ring of Stockholm, and always packed with traffic. In the DLC this road is just 2 lanes, which makes the road look rather unimpressive. Furthermore, some aspects in Stockholm feel half-baked. They made 2 beautiful custom interchanges, only ruined by the fact that there's a short weaving area connecting the 2. But right next to that there are 2 standard interchanges that could have been so much better if they used some custom designs. And then there is the signage. They use the new system, but they don't use it to its full potential. SCS still limits the sign prints to cities that are actually in-game, and the rest of the cities, no matter how important, do not exist. They cover up roads you can't access with these black bags on the signs, which look really ugly but still better than the X's they put on the sign previously. Furthermore, they don't seem to mix up the sign designs in Sweden for at-grade intersections and full-blown interchanges that are grade separated. There are also quite a lot of questionable sign designs, and there is a lot to improve in that front, and we will definitely do that in ProMods. The road markings on the new road system can look a bit cartoonish, because SCS decided to make the dash lines really short. For instance, the lines on this piece of road are 2.5 meters long with gaps of equal distance. In reality, these dashes are often much longer than this. For instance, in this example in Denmark, dashes should be 5 meters long and have 10 meters of spacing. This means that for every 3 dashes you see here, there should actually be 1 dash with twice the length. Can you see what I mean? But there's also some stuff to comment about things that are not there. And that's the problem. First, let me address the big elephant in the room. I miss Aarhus. And not me, many people seem to miss it. There is plenty of space to put it on the map. Heck, it even shows on earlier map plans of the DLC for ISCS. So this begs the question why this isn't there. It's like leaving out Antwerp in Belgium. Oh wait, they actually did that. There's also some smaller stuff I miss. I miss small stretches of motorway around Bergen and Kalmar, while on the E4 you see that it's in the DLC a motorway all the way from Jönköping to Helsingborg. Well, there should be a 2+1 road stretch between Värnamo and Ljungby. This is a stretch of 30 kilometers in length. That's longer than the distance between Stockholm and Södertälje. I see no reason why this is left out. And of course I missed the Fehmarn link between Puttgarden and Rudby, but since SCS has never built the Autobahn 1 towards Puttgarden, it's understandable that they didn't include it here. Overall, the DLC is definitely a step in a good direction, and SCS has excelled itself in the terms of map building. There is definitely a lot of gorgeous stuff in the DLC, but at some fronts it could be so much more. With the improvements from us at ProMods, we can make this map even greater. But that will take a while. My rating for this DLC is 8 out of 10 points. There's a lot of good stuff there, but there is also quite a lot of potential that has not been used. I would still recommend this map, and if you haven't bought it yet, please do. Despite all its errors, it's still worth its price. So, I hope you enjoyed this review, and for more information you can check our website and our blog over at promods.net, or you can check out our Facebook page. Until next time, bye community!